Hello S3 and welcome to week 3, which is Health and Housing in 19th Century Victorian Britain. So this week we're going to look in more detail at what housing conditions were like in 19th century Victorian Britain and the issues that this caused in terms of people's health. Now, today we're going to look closely, as I said there, at slum housing and health issues. By the end of this lesson, this is your two main aims. So firstly, to decide what slum housing was like, that's what we're going to look at firstly, and then we're going to look to explain the health issues people in Britain faced. Now, in 1800, only 17% of Scots lived in towns. Many of them lived in the countryside where they worked. By 1900, 50% of Scots then lived in towns. Just 100 years later, there had been a massive increase. Now, this caused huge issues. Now, this diagram here, if you want to draw this in your jotter, then please feel free to pause the PowerPoint at this point and draw this, because this is a great diagram just to show you how the population of an industrial town might be divided and how it might have looked. So you'll see in the middle of the page it has the town centre, the inner ring, the outer ring and the southern suburbs. Now, within each ring it shows you the sort of houses that existed. So in the town centre is the slums, the poor houses, which are near the factories, and they are mainly for the labouring classes. Now, these types of houses were known as tenements, and this is what our focus is going to be on today, where the majority of the working class obviously lived in this slum housing, so that's what we're going to focus on. In the inner ring, you'll see there's a small terraced houses where there's no gardens, but that's mainly artisans, so a bit more wealthier than the working class. You then have the outer ring, which is solid semi-detached villas of the middle class, and then on the southern suburbs you have the large detached houses and big gardens for the wealthy, so usually your factory owners, for example. Now, you'll see something important here is the main wind direction. So the way that the wind was blowing, obviously that meant that a lot of it moved towards the town centre, so the town centre, because of the factories that were there as well, became very polluted. Now, our first task for today, we're going to look at slum housing in 19th century Britain, so where the working class lived. Now, what I'd like you to do is to use the information from the following slides, which we're going to go through, to add in points around your mind map about what slum housing was like. So you're going to see a lot of pictures, we'll discuss a few things here, and you just need to add in points around your mind map. Okay, so slum housing. This is a slum tenement in Dundee. Now, you'll see just from the picture here, the houses are obviously very close together. It's back to back. These are what's known as tenements. Now, we're using the word house. Ultimately, working class families would have a room. That would be their house, effectively, and we'll look at this in more detail, but that's where they would eat and that's where they would sleep. Now, you'll see here, obviously it's very dark, it's very polluted at this time. Your rooms are very close together, and you'll see running down the middle of the picture there, that is your sewage waste. So what we'll find out as well is when people were doing the toilet at this time, there was no indoor toilets, so people shared a toilet known as a cesspit. And ultimately, if you couldn't access the cesspit, then a lot of people did the toilet in a bucket and then threw it outside. That's where a lot of your food waste would go as well, and other rubbish, so that caused a lot of issues. So very dark, very polluted. This is a picture of inside a Glasgow tenement, so you could see here again, as I said, this is where you eat, this is where you sleep, so you'll see in the background there, there's somebody sleeping in the bed, you have children gathered around the table and the mother with the young baby as well. So very cramped inside slum housing as well. This is a privy, also known as a cesspit, which was the communal toilet in the slums of Liverpool. So again, what we'll find out is there was no indoor toilet, people shared a toilet. Now, you could end up sharing this toilet with up to 70 other people, which also led to horrible conditions and disease spreading as well. This is another image here of slum housing at this time, and again you'll see the sewage lying in the middle of the street, which is all overflowing, so there's no proper sewage system at this time. Issues with this is a lot of this sewage would then mix in with the water that you would be drinking, so it would be dirty water, which would lead to diseases such as cholera as well. I know you can't see very clearly, but a lot of the windows that are there are actually boarded up. People at this time were lucky to have a window, and if they did have a window, they would have to pay a window tax to actually have the window. Now, a lot of the working class couldn't afford a window tax, so either they would have no window at all, or the window would be boarded up, which obviously, without a window in your house, you imagine that, very dark, not a lot of natural light getting in as well. This is some slum dwellers in Glasgow in 1900. Now you'll see again from this picture here, if you just look at the picture of the working class, you'll actually see some of the children haven't got any shoes on their feet. They're living in horrendous conditions. There's a lot of people in that picture as well, showing you how overcrowded it actually was. This is an outdoor sink from the 1890s as well, so again, not everyone had access to a sink in their room, so to say. So an outdoor sink was available for people to go and use as well, but again, remember, you could be sharing this with lots of other people as well. The water that you're obviously getting for that outdoor sink as well can be mixed in with sewage as well, which is going to cause problems. Now, this diagram here shows you really what people's houses or rooms were like at this time. So it says there in the diagram, one family in each of these base rooms, and then that's under the basement. Now you'll see this is what your tenement building would look like. Now, ultimately, these tenement buildings were poorly built, they were made from cheap material. You'll see there's no windows in this. There's a small skylight at the top, but there's no windows. There were obviously a lot of damp rising up as well, which caused issues for the houses as well, and because there's no natural light coming in and no natural ventilation, that causes issues with damp as well. It also says here in the statement, the basement rooms are up to 14 feet below the street level. The tiny attic rooms are stuffy in summer, miserable in winter, and awkward in shape. All of the rooms are small and narrow. The end of the bed is often cut off, so the family is unable to lie at full length. So you imagine lying in your bed but not actually able to stretch out to a full length because of the makeup of the room and the size that you have to work with. You would need to cut up to an extent to get into your bed. Obviously, the fact that some of the rooms are below street level, that meant that the sewage, the waste would sometimes end up seeping into your room or seeping through the floorboards as well, which obviously wouldn't be very pleasant for people living there. Now this is just some figures from Bury in Lancashire in 1842, so this lets you see the issues in terms of overcrowding and how people were living. So, a survey they did in Bury in Lancashire found that 400 families slept one in a bed, so as most of us will do today. 1,500 families slept two in a bed, 770 families slept 3 people in one bed, 210 families slept 4 people in a bed, and 63 families they surveyed slept 5 or more in one bed. So that again lets you see the issues that people are facing at this time. Now this diagram here lets you see inside a tenement house effectively. Now you'll see here at either side of the diagram it's got next door flat, next door flat. If you even look at the measurements here, the size of this room, it's 4.5 metres by 3 metres, so not a big room at all. Now, within this room, you'll see there is a window there, which it says, but again, if window tax was obviously an issue at this time, so if they couldn't afford window tax, then that window could well be boarded up. You have the sink there, you have a mattress on the floor where maybe an older girl in the family would sleep, you have a small cooking area, you have a cupboard, and then you'll see that you've got a single bed for 3 boys to live in, and then you've got a built-in bed at the top there for the husband, the wife, the baby, and 2 girls to sleep in. So in total, in this room, you'll see there's 8 people in total. So you've got the 1 girl, then you've got the 3 boys, so there's 4, husband and wife, 5, 6, baby 7, and 2 girls. So there are actually 9 people in total living in this room. So you imagine sharing a room like that. Probably that size room there, 3 metres by 4.5 metres, wouldn't be much bigger than some of your bedrooms. You imagine 9 people being in that room. And in that room, washing, sleeping, cooking, everything going on in that one room. And obviously you'll see how close the next door flat is to you as well. So horrendous conditions that they're living in. So it says here, describe the problems many people face in their homes in the 19th century. Give at least 5 problems. Well, we could see that, yes, there is one window, but that's it. There's one sink to share for all those people. There's no shower. There's no indoor toilet. There's a small cooking area. There's only one cupboard for space, so there's a lack of space. There's only one door, so there's huge issues here. This here gives you an idea of Nottingham in 1845 of the back-to-back houses, so how close the houses were together. You'll see the H stands for house, where families would potentially live in. You have the pub in the corner. Now, the pub was actually a way for a lot of working class people to try and forget about their problems and go and get drunk quite a bit. They would rely heavily on alcohol to try and forget about the issues that they're facing, which obviously caused health issues as well. You'll see it's got the enclosed courtyard that all the houses look onto. There's a shed, and then the smaller squares there are where the toilets would be located. You also have a shop and a house further up as well, and tunnels to enter the courtyard. Now again, you imagine this amount of people living in such a small space, all cramped in, all needing to share a toilet, it's going to cause massive, massive issues. Now the toilet that a lot of people would share at this time would be known as a cesspit. Now this is what your typical cesspit would look like. So you would go down, go to your cesspit. So ultimately it's made out of wood. You'll see there's a ventilation slit at the top when you close the door over. You've got pieces of torn up newspaper for toilet. You've not got any nice toilet roll that you can use here. You've got a seat. You've got a sloping roof. So obviously if it rains, then the roof, because the roof's sloping, then the water will run down instead of sitting on top of it and making it very damp. Then you'll see there you do the toilet, and then there's a sloping base to make sure that your human waste can then run out, and that runs out the back, out of behind the cesspit, and you have what's known as the compost heap. So ultimately that's human waste sitting there. Now you imagine 70 people using that on a daily basis. If disease is going around, some people might not be feeling particularly well, so diarrhea might be an issue for a lot of people. You imagine all of that going on, not very nice at all. Also the fact that that human waste could be mixing in with your water, your drinking water. So again, horrendous conditions. Now this is an image of some cesspits here that some people were using in 1863. So this has 3 sat together. Again, you'll see if you compare that to the toilet that maybe you have at home. It's outside. You imagine the freezing winters needing to go down there for the toilet as well. Some people, obviously, as I mentioned, would actually do the toilet inside their house in a bucket and just throw it outside as well. Okay, so that was task number 1. A bit about conditions in slum housing. So we're going to pause there with task number 1 just then. We'll go over some of the points in a moment as well. Your next task number 2, is to read over the worksheet on cesspits, just to find out a bit more information about cesspits, what they were, how they were looked after ultimately. So if you answer the questions on cesspits, and make sure you upload your answers via the assignment tab. Okay, so to summarise for task 1 as well, what you could have had around your mind map is poor quality of houses. Okay, so they're tenement housing ultimately, they're poorly built, very, very poor quality to live in. Overcrowding, as we know, we saw there that you could have 9 if not more people living in one room, so very, very overcrowded. There's a lack of clean water supply, so ultimately you never turned your tap on, there was fresh water coming through, that did not happen. The water supply would be contaminated with things like human waste. There's a lack of sewers, so again you saw there with some of the pictures the waste just sitting on the street. A lack of ventilation, so sometimes there's no obviously windows in your houses, so you couldn't open the window and let any natural ventilation coming in, which would cause health issues. No building regulations at this time, so houses again could be very, very poorly built. Walls could be unstable, roofs could be unstable. There was no official building regulations to stop this. Now obviously a lot of people at this time would build houses as quickly as they could for as cheap as they could to make more money, and it was the working class that suffered due to this, who were living in poor quality housing. There was also a lack of furniture in the house as well. It wasn't like they had lots of furniture that they could buy because they couldn't afford this. A lot of the working class also worked in the factories. They stayed near the factories that they worked in, and they never had a lot of money to spend on furniture. The site that maybe a house were built on was never properly prepared, which also caused issues. When the houses were built, it was cheap materials that were used. That leads to things like leaky roofs. So leaky roofs, ultimately with water getting in, that again can cause damp, can cause health issues. Also, some of these houses were next to unsafe businesses like butchers. So again, with animals being killed at these butchers, animal blood running out into the street, mixing with the other sewage that's there and into your drinking water as well. Poor quality food, so a lot of the working class, again, it wasn't like they had a fridge or a freezer to keep food in. It wasn't like there was natural ventilation in the house for a lot of them, so a lot of the food would go mouldy at times and they'd be eating food that would be very unsafe. And obviously, the big one we discussed there as well, no inside toilet. So you have a number of points there that you could have mentioned about conditions of slum housing at this time in Victorian Britain. Horrendous compared to what conditions exist today. Now, this leads us on to the sort of impact that this has on people's health. Now, Scotland as a nation has actually always had quite a poor health record. You'll see there 2 images, Iron Brew, a very famous Scottish drink which is very, very popular, but obviously as we know, not very good for us, and fish and chips, a very, very popular national dish, but again, isn't the healthiest for us. So Scotland's always had issues with health, but in particular at this time in 19th century Britain there was massive, massive issues. Now, 19th century housing was ultimately very, very bad for your health. You'll see here in Dundee, people had an average age and average life expectancy of 33. So if you think about Jimmy Brown here, who was born in 1843, if he only has a life expectancy of 33, then he will obviously only live until 1876, so not very long. Whereas if you have in Glamis, for example, Alf McTurnip, in Glamis there was a life expectancy of 62, so Alf McTurnip would actually live until 1905. So life expectancy in more rural areas like Glamis, where housing conditions were maybe not as bad, or it was bigger housing and it was more wealthier people that lived there, that was obviously meant that your life expectancy was a lot longer than if you live in the cities and places like Dundee. Now this is, if you had tuberculosis, this is how your body could end up looking. As I said there, you end up wasting away ultimately. It wastes away at your body. Typhus, that's some symptoms of typhus there, and there's the body lice that would ultimately attack you, and you could end up with rashes across your skin. Cholera, there are cases when they say that cholera would ultimately end up turning your body blue and could kill you as well. Cholera was a major problem at this time. It became known as King Cholera. Ultimately it caused so much death across Britain. So you'll see here the different years and the people that died of cholera in Britain. So in 1831, 32,000 people died. In 1842 there was a cholera epidemic where about 62,000 people died. In 1854, 20,000 people died. And in 1866, 14,000 people died. Reason for this is they ultimately didn't know what was causing cholera. There was no way to stop it happening because no one identified what was actually causing it. That obviously meant, but when people got cholera, that they could catch it very quickly and die very quickly as well. Now you'll see here, this is actually from London, we map here of issues in terms of where cholera was killing people. Now the dark black squares there are pump sites, so that's where people would get their water from, and you'll see the wee dots are the deaths from cholera. So you see in places like Broad Street there, where there is a pump and a lot of overcrowding there, there's a lot of deaths around that water pump. And then further out you go, obviously there's less deaths where there's less overcrowding, but a lot of the deaths are taking place near the water pumps. Now obviously the great debate at this time is what actually caused poor health. Well, we now know obviously the housing conditions that people were living in, but at this time doctors couldn't actually agree on what caused poor health. They thought, is it maybe overcrowding, is it poor ventilation, is it poor sanitation, is it people's diets, is it the cesspit, is it the water? Doctors didn't actually know what was causing poor health. Now the government at this time, instead of helping people to deal with issues in terms of poor health, their attitude at this time was they adopted a laissez-faire approach. Now a laissez-faire approach, which you can see from the picture there, is ultimately they just sit back and they do nothing. It's up to people to help themselves at this time, is the government attitude towards healthcare, which again means that a lot of the working class people who become ill do not have the facilities there to be able to get cured of their ill health. Okay, so that was a bit on what impact poor housing has on people's health. Now what we're going to do is just try 2 exam style questions on this. So the first exam style question that you're going to try is an explain question, which you've done before. Now remember, when you're answering this, you use mnemonic A, B, C. A stands for answer, so you refer back to the question. B, use the word because, and C, you comment. Your question is going to be explain the reasons people in Britain faced health issues in the 19th century. It's going to be worth 4 marks. Now on your worksheet it gives you an example of how you answer this using A, B, C, so you just need to give another 4 points, but 1 has been done for you already. Now think about back to housing conditions, why those housing conditions would cause people to face health issues. So it's not enough just to say one reason people in Britain faced health issues in the 19th century was because of overcrowding. Try and say what overcrowding actually led to. And the other type of question you're going to be asked is a mini essay question. Now a mini essay question, I know we've not done much on a mini essay question, but a mini essay question in history is worth 9 marks. Now the types of questions you can be asked in terms of mini essay, it can be worded to what extent, how important, or how successful. Now for this mini essay question, your 9 marks, how you get your 9 marks are the following. So you get a mark for your introduction, you get 5 marks for knowledge points, you get 1 mark for balance, so that's on more than one factor. You get a mark for coming to a conclusion, and you get 1 mark for giving a reason for your conclusion. Now, how we answer a mini essay question is we use the mnemonic I face to plan our answer. Now, what I face actually stands for? I stands for introduction. So you give an introduction to your essay, so you describe a wee bit of background, and you give the factors that you're going to discuss. F stands for factor, so that's the factor named in the question, so you explain why that's important, so you give 2 to 3 facts about that. A stands for alternative factors, so you discuss alternative factors by saying however, and then try and give another couple of points about those. And then C stands for conclusion, so you clearly answer the question, what was the main factor, or was it successful? And then E stands for evidence, so you give one piece of evidence to support your conclusion. Now your question is going to be, to what extent was overcrowding the worst condition faced by people in 19th century Britain? Now, for this question, you'll see in your worksheet, the introduction has been done for you. You just need to fill in the blanks in terms of the other 2 factors that you want to speak about. So your factor in the question here is overcrowding. You need to identify 2 other conditions that people in 19th century Britain faced, and you need to discuss a wee bit about them. Now, 2 other conditions that they faced, the things you could speak about, other factors you can discuss, and you just need to pick 2. Obviously, overcrowding, that is the one already mentioned in the question. You could mention a lack of clean supply of water, a lack of sewers, a lack of ventilation, a lack of furniture, cheap materials being used, leaky roofs, being next to unsafe businesses like butchers, poor quality food, no inside toilet. You can mention any of those other factors. Now use what's on the worksheet to help you to answer this. The worksheet has a structure for you to follow, and if you have any questions, remember you can just ask. Okay, and once you've done all that, just a wee plenary, it says it on your post-it note, but if you want to just do it in your jotter even, what I'd like you to do is just to write down from this PowerPoint something that you've learned, something that you enjoyed, and something that you would change, just for moving forward if there's any changes in particular you'd like to be made for the way that we're currently learning history. Okay, thank you.